put reading coaches in every single elementary school because we thought that was important. We also said that any child that could not read by the 3rd grade was not going to pass. We were going to hold them back. We were going to make sure we came up with a family plan to get that child back on track. And so that Read for Succeed Act also passed. And then we said technology was important. And this goes back, and you've heard me say this before. My daughter goes to the River Bluff High School in Lexington, where every classroom has a flat-screen TV and every child has a tablet. Yet when I went to my hometown of Bamberg to give an anti-bullying speech, they didn't even have the equipment for me to play a video on. That was immoral. And what we wanted to say was every child is worthy of that technology. So we put money into the technology budget for every school district, but we gave them the flexibility to decide where to start, how to do it. So some put it towards tablets, some put it towards getting internet access, some put it towards smart boards. We said we needed to do that for 3 years to make that mean something. And so then we came to last year, and what we saw was we doubled down on reading coaches because we were having such good success. We went ahead and doubled down on technology because it was really starting to make a difference in our school districts. And then we said, we wanted to start working towards getting teachers to stay in rural school districts. So this year, we're building even more on that success. And so I am here to roll out what is our new education plan for this year. We have continued to work with the Republican and Democrat leadership in the House and the Senate. They know what our plan is, and so I want to talk about that today. The first thing is we're going to continue to fund the basics. We are going to, in our budget, increase the student-based cost by $80. That's going to be $165 million. That includes the consolidation of EIA into the districts and also add a dual enrollment weight. What we are seeing now, especially with our international companies, they want to see dual enrollment. We want to start doing that across the state so that we can have 2 tracks that a student goes on. We're going to start that as of this next budget year. $27 million in instructional materials, $11.5 million for charter school growth. We are adding 7 new charter schools, and it is now the 15th largest school district in the state. So charter schools continue to grow, and then we're adding another $1 million for virtual schools because we are seeing more and more students are finding virtual schools more of a complement to what they're able to do. We knew that we needed to work on transportation needs. In a meeting with the superintendents, so many of them asked for help with school bus drivers because in rural school districts, they could not find bus drivers because they were going to be truck drivers. So we are increasing the pay for a school bus driver from $7.46 an hour to $10.96 an hour, but we're also going to allow these to be full-time jobs. And so the accountability is the schools are going to start using these drivers during the day to actually help with things in the schools so that we can actually have them go full-time so that we can get more of those school bus drivers to stay and be able to have the benefits as well. And then we're going to add $3.5 million towards the hazardous route transportation plan. We've heard from a lot of the growing districts. I'll say again, South Carolina was named the #2 state in the country that people are moving to behind Texas, and we're feeling the growth of that. So in high growth areas, we need to make sure it's safe for kids to get to school. In some cases, we need to make sure where there's not sidewalks, we have avenues to get there, so we're going to start focusing on that. We are now, what we started last year with recruiting rural teachers, we're going to put in effect this year. I'm very excited about this. Now for a student that says they want to be a teacher, when they go to college, if they will put 8 years, if they will lock into 8 years in a rural school district, we will pay their education and they will be debt-free. So this will be $15 million we are going to do to start this program so that we now have permanent good teachers in our rural school districts. We want to make sure that they see the goodness of this. And if we know that we can get them debt-free and we know that we can allow them that opportunity, a lot of times when they go to the rural school districts, they stay there. They meet their spouse there. They make friends there. They become part of the community. And so it may not have a movie theater and it may not have a restaurant, but it has a community they fall in love with. And so that's what we're going to focus on in terms of that, and that will move forward this year. Technology. So we said we needed to fund 3 years at least Technology funding is going to keep on going because technology continues to change. But we're focusing in on what those technology changes are. So now we know there are certain schools that can't get internet connection into the school without some major changes. So we are going to invest $29 million into our third-year investment of technology, but we're also going to put in infrastructure money for the older buildings and those that are distressed areas that don't have internet access. And the other thing that's important, and I know this from my children, they have a tablet. That's a great thing. They don't have books as much anymore. So in order to be able to study and in order to be able to do homework, you have to have internet at home. And so we are going to invest in children having internet access in their homes. And so that's something that home connectivity of schools is going to start to be a big part of how they can study and do their homework. We're going to be working with select school districts on which ones we're going to start doing that and then continue that as we go forward. Many people have talked about First Steps, and First Steps has been an ongoing conversation. We think we can take it to an even better place, and we think that the way we take it to a better place is by making sure it's more effective, and it's dealing with our agencies that can do more for them efficiently. So, for example, when it comes to the expertise of agencies, HHS and the health policies that deal with BabyNet would be going directly with HHS, so they could better make sure they were capturing all the people that they needed to and make sure that BabyNet was working effectively. For 4K, we're going to send that over to the Department of Education. They know what early childhood needs to look like, so we're going to make sure that they have that part as they go forward. And then we're going to put all the county offices under the umbrella of the Children's Trust Fund, and we're going to do a Children's Trust Board, and we're going to do that with a reconstituted board so that we can get that moved in the right direction. That is going to be a reform and a change. We've talked with the legislators about it. They're open to that change, but we really think if they want to save First Steps, this is the way to do it because it's got to be effective and it's got to move in the right direction. Education reform. So I think this is the year where we have convinced and hopefully will continue to convince legislators that every governor should be able to appoint their superintendent of education. And I will tell you, for me, education is extremely important in the state of South Carolina. And when you don't have an appointed superintendent, you often have two different agendas. Superintendent Spearman and I are trying to show what it looks like when you have one agenda and you work together. I consider her my partner. We work as if this was a cabinet agency. Any issues I'm bringing up to you, she's going to come talk afterwards because we've agreed on these issues and what needs to happen going forward. But if you look at the situation now, if it's elected, there's no experience that's needed. There's no background that's needed. There's no qualifications that are needed to run for superintendent of education. And whether there is a Republican governor or a Democrat governor, they deserve to have a partner in education working right alongside them so that at the end of the day, the reforms that are done for the children and not done for the political parties should they happen to be separate. So we're excited about that, and we are going to make a big push for that. That would be on the 2016 ballot. Once that gets approved, it would certainly be a vote by the people. Once that gets approved, it would come to 2017, 2018 for the enabling legislation that would actually list the qualifications that a superintendent of education would have to have, because we do think experience in education matters in dealing with that. And then the vacancy would actually happen January 2019. So we would expect another re-election of Superintendent Spearman and then also another election of a governor before all of this would take place. And then the last thing that I am very excited about. I have said to you that my heart is always in rural areas. And growing up in Bamberg, I've often said we didn't know what we didn't have. Now I know what we didn't have. And once you know what you didn't have and you know what children don't have, you can't ever turn away from that. I can't turn away from the fact that as we've gone to schools across this state, we are seeing schools that are in horrible condition. We're seeing schools with leaky roofs. We're seeing teachers having to wear rain boots to walk through the rain. We're seeing walls that are molded. We're seeing building structures that are not safe. And so we are saying it is time to deal with the facilities of schools in our state. But if we're going to do it, we're going to do it smart. This is not about throwing money and seeing who gets to pick it up. This is not about which legislator fights the hardest or which happens to be the most senior. This is about me partnering with the Department of Education. And what we want to do is we want to go around and assess every school across South Carolina. This will take us a year to do it. Assess every school across South Carolina. Develop a template so that we know exactly what requirements are needed for a school, how we can use things in a dual way, whether it's lunchrooms and auditoriums all in one, how we can make the most use of the space, which districts need it the most, and then take into account size and age appropriation. A lot of these things, if you notice, every time we talk about building a new school, there's $1 million in architectural fees for every new school that's built. If we have a template, we won't be going through that anymore. The state will be able to use all the same templates. You won't have the big River Bluff High School to look at versus a school in Clarendon that doesn't have all of those same things. We should have something to where there's some accountability on the spending, but there's also a functionality to where we have everything that a student would need. So what we're going to do is we're going to get this template put together, and then we are going to propose a 1% of state obligation bonding capacity. And what that means is if our economy stays the way it is, which the economists say it is going to continue to be gangbusters, we are looking at $1.5 to $2 billion that would go to new facilities across South Carolina for schools. And that means renovations, that means new buildings, that means making sure that we are taking care of where these kids go to school. Because I always say morale matters. Morale matters for kids and teachers. And if we put them in schools they're proud of, if we put them in schools that are safe, they'll know that they're worth more. They'll know their value. They'll know their confidence. And so we're going to start doing that. And I know over the last year, and you will hear this year, that the legislature wants to focus on higher education buildings. Well, I'll ask you to go to USC. I'll ask you to go to Clemson. I'll ask you to go to any of our higher education facilities. How beautiful are they? I want you to look at these posters. I will not support a bond on higher ed buildings until we address needs like this first. We have to deal with schools that look like this. We have to deal with schools that require kids to wear boots because of the water. We have to require schools that are safe, that don't have mold or asbestos. We've got to require something better for our schools, because if we're going to make these improvements to children's education, part of the improvement is where they spend most of their day. And that's in a school. And we want that school to be safe. And we want